Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm taking one final look at the Enter the Phoenix update before the Eternals stuff comes next week to see where the character upgrades finally stand in PvE and PvP. This video is specifically for PvE and the next one is going to be specifically for PvP. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing the potential builds that you can put on these characters for PvE and look at some of the ideal rotations that you can use with the new uniforms. Also, I recently just opened 1,000 story chests on a live stream that I did, so if you weren't able to catch that and wanted to check out the kind of things that I got, I will do a follow-up video of that, but if you want to just check out the live stream as it was, then I'll leave a link on this video that you can click and go to that video, or you can just check it out on my channel in the video list under Marvel Future Fight or Live, I think. These are what my card stats look like, and all the testing that I did is based off these card stats. In the first video that I did for the Enter the Phoenix update, I looked at how Captain America and Wolverine performed versus Null, so for this one I'm going to look at how they do versus World Boss Ultimate stages, where that all defense down is very useful. Hyperion I didn't look at how he does versus Null, so I will take a look at that in a little bit. With the old uniform, 3 minutes and 21 seconds is what's remaining after stage 99 clear with no strikers. With a new uniform, he finishes the same content 42 seconds faster, and that's largely due to the change on his ultimate or 6th skill, in which he gains 50% all defense down that applies at the max value right away. If you're wondering what kind of build to go with on the new Captain America uniform, you have a lot of options. You can use a Judgment now because he has that elemental damage being the fire type. You can also go with something like a Rage and also something like a CTP of Energy, or possibly even a CTP of Destruction if you want something of a hybrid between PvE and PvP. He is really proc friendly with his newest uniform, so if you want to build him specifically for PvE, something like CTP of Energy would actually be pretty good on him. In regards to the rotation, you want to do 5, delay cancel 4, but right off the start you can't really do that and proc properly. So initially when you just start, you want to use your 4th skill right away, so you proc, and then you do your 3, 2, and 1 filler, and then when you're on the last second of your proc before it's up, you go into your 5th skill and delay cancel it after you hit the ground, and then go into your 4th skill. This way you'll be able to do your 5 delay cancel 4 and get the buff from the 5th skill active and the proc active while going into your 4th skill. When it comes time to do your ultimate, you simply do the same thing, but you use your 5th skill and then go into your 6th skill. If the proc for some reason isn't properly aligned, you can just tap the 5th skill to get the buff active and just charge up your 6th skill so you make sure that you proc on the ultimate. I took him into ABX just to see how he would do with a single skill damage proc. I'm personally using a CTP of Destruction since I want use from him in PvP, but he managed to score around 8 million with this single skill proc. In ABX specifically though, I would think something like a Rage or probably a CTP of Judgment that's reforged would be the most ideal if you're chasing high scores. In PvP, on the other hand, you do have a lot of options. You can go with anything from Transcendence, Greed, Regen, or Authority, or Destruction like I'm using. I can't say which one of these would perform the best, since it really depends what you want from the character. I personally want the character to be a little bit more burst damage, so I went with the Destruction of course, but if you want the character to be tankier, you could easily go with something like a Regen, since his base health is really high and his 5th heals him for about 25% of his health now. With the previous uniform, Wolverine was pretty horrible in World Boss Ultimate, specifically because he didn't have any all defense down that ignored immunity. With that being the case, it took me just a little bit over 4 minutes to complete stage 99 of Proxima with no strikers. Then with the new uniform, I finished the same content 2 minutes and 42 seconds faster. And again, that's largely due to the ultimate like Captain America that has that 50% all defense down that ignores immunity and immediately applies at the max value. Unfortunately, even though Wolverine does better in World Boss Ultimate with this new uniform, he does still struggle in content like World Boss Legend, where that all defense down doesn't really matter. Knowing this, if you still do want to build him for PvE, then a CTP of Rage or a CTP of Judgment would probably be your best option, since a single skill damage proc won't really utilize the most of his damage because a lot of his skills are kind of lingering effect, so it's going to be hard to proc on the skill that you want. I can't necessarily tell you which CTP would be better for PvE, since I do know that people chasing ABX scores will use a Reforged Judgment, but he does have that 50% guaranteed crit rate in his passive, his tier 2 passive I believe, so using a CTP of Rage would actually perform pretty well since he has that guaranteed crit. If you're wondering what kind of rotation you can use once you have a build like this, the most ideal one that you might want to go with is to open with your second skill and then delay cancel it after he hits the ground, so it has that lingering damage effect. Then you go into your third skill and try to basically cancel that right away into your fourth skill, and slightly delay cancel that into your fifth skill. And the reason for you to go into this rotation is so that you have all those lingering damage effects, burn effects, and buffs up at the same time when your 5 is activated, so that the proc is going on with your highest damage skills and all this damage ticking at the same time. Surprisingly enough, even with no damage proc, I was basically able to tie my Captain America score, which he had the CTP of Destruction and I had a CTP of Regen. I was still able to tie that score using this rotation, which shows you the potential that Wolverine has in ABX specifically. Moving over to Hyperion, with just his uniform and no T3 and no damage proc and no strikers, and even not an optimal team, I was just using the same team that I was testing the other characters with, he's able to finish stage 99 of Cull with about 2 minutes and close to 40 seconds remaining. With the T3 upgrade and the stat bump, he completes the content 50 seconds faster, which seems to be pretty standard with T3 upgrades, completing content that they previously weren't T3 in about a minute quicker. I can't really say which kind of build would be most ideal for him in PvE, though if I had to guess, I'd probably say purely for PvE, something like a CTP of Rage or a Judgment would likely be the most ideal, since if you go with a single skill damage proc and you miss procking on the fifth skill, you lose a lot of damage. Whereas if you use something like a Rage or Judgment, you can proc early on something like the fourth, and then the proc is up and you know you'll do a lot of damage on the fifth skill, which is his hardest hitting skill. So with that in mind, a kind of rotation that you can use for him is to go into your third skill and then let that play out until he hits the ground, and then go into your fourth skill and you can basically almost insta-cancel that into your fifth skill. The reason for doing this is to get the self buffs from the third and the fourth skill up before you go into your fifth skill that has that damage accumulation, so you have all of those buffs active as well as a bit of the lingering damage from this fourth skill when your proc is up, so you do maximum damage. You can see that he's not too bad in PvE, but he's really reliant on having that damage accumulating from the damage being taken on his fifth skill to really shine, so it's kind of hard to play him well. Even with no damage proc, I did expect to finish quicker versus Null, especially since he has triple buffs with his own lead and 2 supports, but regardless, I did finish with about 40 seconds left, which I guess isn't too bad. Even though Hyperion's performance in PvE, specifically World Boss Legend, doesn't seem to be anything exceptional, his damage is still really good, and I was quite surprised to see that I did break 8 million damage in ABX with his leadership and 2 supports and no damage proc. Before I end the video, I just wanted to quickly mention some of these timeline survival tips that I learned while playing. You might not really care for timeline survival that much now because it's so tedious, but if you do the lower levels or if you still do the higher levels, here are some things that might help. First one I mentioned in my Twitter, so if you're not following me on there, that's one thing that you can go check out, and I do drop some interesting information on there as well. My Twitter is the same as my YouTube, so it's IIXCommanderXII. But the tip that I'm showing off here is that you can take Rescue and any team, including Doctor Strange, to counter the type restrictions. Then you simply go into or switch to Rescue and use your third skill, then just follow around the character that was at low health, which was my Bullseye, and then by the end of the fight he should be full, and you can do this for any characters that are low and you can prevent them from dying. The other tip I have is you can save yourself from having to lose a fight or having to recover a character by simply force quitting out of the app. So if you're stuck in a fight that you can't win, just leave the game, close it, and then come back into it, choose the team that you want to beat it, and you won't suffer any penalties. That pretty much does it for this video. This was the PvE review for this previous update. If you're interested in the PvP one, then make sure to check out the next video. Also, if you want to join my Discord channel, I have a Discord channel now. There was a bunch of requests for it, so I made one this past week. If you want to join it, the link is going to be in the description below, so just click on that and then follow the instructions to get access to it. Thank you for watching, and if you found the video interesting or helpful, make sure to like and subscribe to help my channel grow so I can bring you more content like this. So thanks again, but the video is now over.